Hey there, Black Sheep. Welcome back to the channel. The channel has reached 1,000 subscribers. And this week, on my community tab, I asked if you would like the usual This Bites or my waking up story. I got an overwhelming 19 votes for my wake up journey. So here we are. Things you should know about me before we get into it. How it started. I am third gen Jehovah's Witness on my dad's side. His mother, my Nana, converted when he and his brothers were young children, and they mostly became criminals, but eventually, in their adult lives, 2 out of 3 were baptized Jehovah's Witnesses, along with their second wives. So it was very much a family culture and expectation that myself, siblings, and cousins would convert as well. My mother was neither dad's second wife, nor was she baptized Jehovah's Witness. She did have several on-off Bible studies over the years, and she did believe that it was the truth, but being part of the LGBTQ community, she knew she could never be accepted as part of the Watchtower's intolerant organization. So I am from what Jehovah's Witnesses call a divided household. I was constantly told about Timothy in the Bible and how he only had one parent and grandparent that was Christian, and that I should be like him and choose Jehovah. I was baptized at age 17. At the same time, I was awarded a full scholarship to a university. The brainwashing had well and truly taken effect, and unfortunately, I chose to leave college after only my first semester to become a pioneer and work part-time at a grocery store. My mom's side was thoroughly dismayed and confused. My dad's side was proud. Most people don't realize how heavily Watchtower dissuades their members from higher education. Now, I'll save things like my first time at a Kingdom Hall, my first convention, my first book study, my first counsel from an elder, all for other videos. Today, I'll just focus on my waking up. The first straw. The first straw that really started my questioning was in 2013 when the Silver Sword, or the New Bible, was released at the annual meeting. Up until that point, annual meetings were only for the elite or most spiritual of all the Jehovah's Witnesses. You had to apply with your credentials or be recommended by one of your local elders as exemplary. Although I was an auxiliary pioneer, that was still the lower tier of commitment. I was an active member of the Kingdom Ministry School and even was a stand-in when people canceled. I volunteered at Quick Builds, but still none of that zealousness previously was enough to qualify for the annual meeting. So very suddenly, when it was meant to be attended by everyone, I was very confused. Why all of a sudden can just anyone attend? It was like the Ark of the Covenant, suddenly anyone can touch it and enter the inner room. And then there was a new Bible? What for? Was it pretty? Sure. But everyone was so excited for it, this gift from Jehovah, and I felt unsure. The fact no one else in my circle was perplexed and was just rejoicing concerned me. What was different? I began taking both Bibles with me to the meetings. Whenever a scripture was mentioned, I turned to it in both and compared side by side. I did this until an elder counseled me on it. He asked me why I felt I needed to compare and suggested that I was showing a lack of faith and appreciation for Jehovah's gifts. Becoming inactive. I went from being a regular auxiliary pioneer to inactive rather rapidly. There was a series of events that led me to becoming inactive. My father got disfellowshipped for substance abuse. I was engaged to a young ministerial servant at the time. He also pioneered. I wanted to move out of my father's house, not because of the disfellowshipping, but because when he was under the influence, he was not a safe person to be around. I suggested to my then fiance that we rent an apartment and go halves on it. I live there alone until we get married. This was not an option for him for whatever reason. His family never liked me anyway because I wasn't purebred Jehovah's Witness, as in born in, untainted by the world. Anyway, I was determined to move away from an unsafe environment, but not a single couple or family in my congregation was willing to rent a spare room to me, a pioneer sister in good spiritual standing. The situation at my dad's became unbearable, and my mental health plummeted. And so I made the decision to move in with my mom and her wife. I was warned by the elders and friends at the Kingdom Hall that moving in with them would be like moving to Sodom and Gomorrah. I was hurt by this. My mother and her wife have always been loving towards me, and I matured to baptism while living with them. So I was confident Holy Spirit could still reach me under their roof. I attended meetings and continued pioneering while living with my worldly gay parents. I only stopped pioneering after breaking up with my fiance. He wanted me to move back to a place I did not feel safe, and he had no interest in moving to the state that I live in. So I broke up with him and was fully resigned that Jehovah didn't mean for me to be married, because I had issues with the headship arrangement, a woman being in submission to a man. Clearly, that meant that I was meant to be single. So I had to get 2 jobs to support myself when I moved out on my own. 2 jobs left no time for service and caused sporadic meeting attendance. Love bombing gone wrong. Jehovah's Witnesses don't know it, but they're trained to love bomb. Whenever a new person attends, everyone in the congregation makes it a point to come up and greet them, ask how they enjoyed the meeting, encourage them to come back. Because my meeting attendance became sporadic and my mental health was still untreated, when I did make it to the hall, I was overwhelmed by brothers and sisters love bombing, telling me they miss me at the hall. They're so happy to see me, that I'll feel less sad if I make more of an effort to be at the hall or out in service, focusing on others and not just on myself. The Watchtower organization is abysmal at mental health. This love bombing only made me feel worse, made me feel guilty and judged. It also started feeling insincere. These pioneer sisters have my number. They know where I live. So why is no one checking on me? Where was my shepherding call? I expressed how everyone coming up to speak to me was causing me anxiety. One pioneer sister agreed that I could sit with her at the hall and that she'd help me. She was very kind, but this arrangement did not work. She was a very social sister, and this left me opened for others to approach me. She simply couldn't understand why I didn't like the brothers and sisters showing me love. Circumstances change. My circumstances changed. This is what Jehovah's Witnesses are usually waiting for. Cults in general will use tragedy when someone is emotionally vulnerable to swoop in with hope, emotional manipulation, all the answers to their problems. I began therapy under caution from the elders because the therapist is not a worshiper of Jehovah, and they said I needed to take everything that the therapist said with a grain of salt, essentially sifting it through the Watchtower filter. I began taking medicine. I began feeling better. 2015, my dad died of cancer. He wrote a letter for reinstatement before he lost his abilities and died in good standing. Jehovah forgives. My mother, who was never married to him and had zero respect for him, showed up with her wife to support me in my grief. Worldly people can show love without condition to whomever they want, whenever they want, because they don't have 9 guys in New York telling them that they can only say hi and nothing else.
Under our current arrangement, we don't say a greeting to individuals who've been removed from the congregation. However, the governing body has decided that publishers can use their Bible-trained conscience to decide whether to give a simple greeting and welcome a disfellowshipped individual who attends a congregation meeting.
Hi, so good to see you here.
Thank you.
While we wouldn't have an extended conversation or socialize with such a person, we do not need to ignore him completely.
Only 3 years later, my Nana, a devout Jehovah's Witness, died of lung disease. She was holding my hand, crying, unsure if she was going to make it to paradise. I told her if she wasn't going to make it as zealous as she was, then none of us had a chance. TV, books, and Facebook. I'm mildly embarrassed, but a TV show on the now defunct Facebook Watch is what made me start my research in the year 2018. The show was called Sacred Lies. A bunch of unknown actors in a series based on a young adult fiction book about a girl who escaped a cult. Episode 2 was called Love Bomb, and the therapist or social worker in the show was explaining to the girl the meaning of the term love bombing and how it's a common tool used by cults.
It's called a love bomb.
What?
Love bombing is a psychological manipulation used by sociopaths, narcissists, and cult leaders. They shower you with affection, compliments, promises, pick up on your emotional wounds, play into your deepest needs until you're hooked. And then you'll put up with almost anything to hold on to that feeling.
This caused me to pause. Wait, we do that. We're not a cult. November 13, 2018 was also the release date of the Jehovah's Witnesses special episode of Leah Remini's Aftermath series. I was too afraid to watch at first, but I was aware of it. First, I needed to learn everything about cults to prove that we, Jehovah's Witnesses, were not one. I read Combating Cult Mind Control by Dr. Stephen Hassan. I ordered my copy off thriftbooks.com, so what I read was an older version that did not include Jehovah's Witnesses. I was still afraid of anything too critical of the governing body. I learned about Dr. Hassan's time in the Moonies cult. There was so much overlap that I couldn't deny that in almost every way, the Watchtower organization behaved like a cult. It looked like a cult, it acted like a cult, and it sounded like a cult. But could it really be? On Dr. Hassan's website, Freedom of Mind, I saw Jehovah's Witnesses and the BITE model. BITE is an acronym that stands for Behavior Control, Information Control, Thought Control, and Emotional Control. And the page highlighted all the ways the Jehovah's Witness religion uses these tactics. I hesitantly agreed, but thought some of it was harsh. Who supplied this information anyway? An apostate? I visited the Cult Education Institute website. This website is established by cult expert Rick Allen Ross. And on the homepage, it says, today's top 10. And on the day that I looked, Jehovah's Witnesses was ranked number 5 on a list amongst very obvious cults like NXIVM and Scientology, which led me back to that ever-looming Scientology, Leah Remini, Jehovah's Witness episode. I had to be brave, to muster up courage. I told myself if it was clearly bitter apostasy, I'll just shut it off. I don't even have to watch the entire thing. When I watched it, I sobbed. I paused several times because the testimonies were so heartbreaking and in many ways relatable. That was also my first introduction to Lloyd Evans. I watched the entire series of Cults in Extreme Belief, and the Jehovah's Witness episode also caused me to sob. The final straw. What I couldn't understand was, if it's a cult, why? Most cult leaders get something out of it. Is a sense of power really enough? What were the governing body getting out of this? Didn't they live in modest dwellings just like any other Bethelite? A Bethelite is a full-time servant who works, lives, eats, sleeps at one of the cult compounds around the world. The then John Cedars channel, Lloyd Evans, posted in 2018 the video Unrighteous Riches. As I watched, I was flabbergasted. I participated in construction projects. I was part of congregation splits, even when generations of families were divided into different congregations.
I saw your name on the list for the South congregation, but your grandkids and their families, they're going to North. So what are you going to do?
What do you mean?
This video helped open my eyes to Watchtower's real estate scam. I realized the governing body were not being honest with their funds. That answered my why. To add to that, on the Cult Education Institute in 2018, an article appeared about the Watchtower selling a $1 million property. My Jehovah's Witness family, like many others, struggled financially. Meanwhile, where are all these millions of dollars going? Finally, there were no excuses left in my mind when I saw the clip of Jeffrey Jackson, governing body member at the Australian Royal Commission. He said that it would be presumptuous of him to say that the governing body were the only spokespeople for God on earth.
And do you see yourselves as Jehovah God's spokespeople on earth?
That, I think, would seem to be quite presumptuous to say that we are the only spokesperson that God is using.
I was shattered. I then devoured almost anything Jehovah's Witness related. News, documentaries, everything XJW, YouTube, Telltale, Owen Morgan, Kevin McPhee, and Lloyd Evans were daily staples. It'll get darker before it gets lighter. It was devastating, realizing everything I was told, all the answers I had to life's questions, all my hopes for the future were lies. I became desperately sad, depressed, even once drinking so much that I couldn't eat or drink for 3 days. Even ice cubes sent me retching. I couldn't grasp the enormity of everything I didn't know. Jehovah's Witnesses are very clear on what their purpose in life is. Serve Jehovah best they can and hopefully do it well enough to survive the War of Armageddon and make it to the new system, paradise. Now, I didn't know what the point of anything was. So I began reading. I began reading books on nihilism. I spoke extensively with a very kind coworker of mine who was religious and even went to a thing called Bibles and Burgers with him, which was a group of people from his church who got together to discuss different topics. I asked lots of questions, and ultimately, I lost faith in the Bible. I came to a new personal belief that every religious group has their own interpretation. I assumed this belief for every religious text. I decided if you go too far in any direction, you're going to bump into a cult, be it LDS, Christian, Buddhist, self-help. Everyone's just trying to figure it out. So then what was the point of anything? Is anything true? Can I find one true thing? Everything is energy, an Einstein quote. Electrons, protons, and neutrons, all part of an atom. They all have a charge, negative, positive, neutral. So for me, I came to believe that the purpose of me being here, of any of us existing, is to create as much positive energy as we can. So when we die, whether or not that energy that leaves us retains consciousness, at least it will retain a positive charge, ready to be used by anyone or anything else that comes after. I had to accept that it's okay not to have all the answers. It's much better than trusting a group of men who also don't know and are just making it up as they go along, tipping things ever so slightly in their favor. I don't have all the answers, and that's okay. One size doesn't fit all. Everyone's journey will be different. Some ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are still Christian. Some become atheist. Some turn to witchcraft. To me, a prayer, a spell, a manifestation, it's all essentially the same thing, but with a different twist. It's just people doing their best to make sense of and make the best of life. The individualism is a beautiful thing to see on XJW Reddit, TikTok, even here in the comments. Once that Jehovah's Witness new personality, cult programming, is uninstalled, we're all so unique. Varying beliefs, opinions, ways of self-expression. We don't have to be on the same page as each other. And it's encouraging when this results in XJWs becoming more tolerant and understanding. What works for me won't work for everyone. For those on their wake up and healing journey, here's some advice, and take it or leave it. 1, create fake profiles for your apostate research. That's what Blacksheep was. Make everything private. 2, come up with a plan. If you plan to fade to maintain those family-friend bonds, this may involve moving so that the elder body loses touch with your current congregation, so your activity isn't being tracked anymore. Personally, I could not live looking over my shoulder, and I decided to dissociate. If you're a minor, get a job, earn money, make worldly friends. So when the time comes, you have a support system waiting for you. Try your best not to burst out in rage, because then you lose control of your outcome. 3, I mailed my letter August 2nd, 2019. Some don't see the need and just leave without a word, and that's 100% valid. For me, I felt that writing a letter was taking back my power and letting them know my eyes are open. It's It's not for everyone. For me, it was taking my power back. No, it was taking control. No one kicked me out. I had the power. I suggest saying your goodbyes to family and friends. Reminisce. Have a final hurrah. I let my friends and family know that I was mailing my letter. I didn't try to inundate them with information, or I just explained I didn't trust the governing body, who, in their own words, are neither inspired or infallible. I told them I love them and that nothing on my end has changed. And if they want to remain in contact, I'm open. I'm here. 4. It's impossible to know how much being shunned sucks until it's happening. You can try to do your best to be prepared, knowing that it's an eventuality, but leave room for surprise, because unfortunately, you will be surprised by your loved ones. I wouldn't advise trying to wake anyone up, although there have been some rare success stories. 5. Finding yourself. Many, once the Jehovah's Witness personality is gone, realize their authentic self has been suppressed for so long that they don't know themselves. You'll be discovering yourself, your values and morals. Everything before was a lie. Things that were forbidden no longer are. It's now up to you to decide what is right for you. Some ex-Jehovah's Witnesses become like kids in a candy shop. They want to try everything and eat until they have a bellyache or are in a sugar coma. There are so many new experiences to be had and no judgment. My only advice is take your time and ask yourself, does this feel true to me? Is this something I really want for myself? Or is it simply because I couldn't before? This helped me. Some ex-Jehovah's Witnesses do things as an F you to the organization. If that feels cathartic to you, as long as you're not hurting yourself or others, do you. 6. Remember it's not your fault. This is hard to do because Watchtower has trained you using emotional control to think problems are always your fault, never the group's or the leaders. How could I believe this stuff? Be patient and kind to you. The Watchtower is a global organization with nearly 100 years using tried and proven methods of manipulation and coercion. They cheated. They lied. This is not on you. And that brings us to the end of my personal story. But I thank you so much for joining me here today. Thank you again to my 1,000 subscribers. I really appreciate all of you, even those who can't safely subscribe. Please give this video a like and leave a comment. It helps the information get out to more people. Next week, it's back to our regular scheduled programming. Continue thinking freely, Blacksheep.